Scorpio, January 2026. Transform control into trust and vulnerability into power. Scorpio, January 2026 is your month to transform obsessive control into genuine trust, emotional armor into authentic vulnerability, and fear-based intensity into empowered depth. Forget everything you've been told about needing to protect yourself constantly. This isn't about becoming naive or unguarded. This is about recognizing that your incredible emotional depth and psychological insight become prison when you use them to control, manipulate, or protect yourself from ever being hurt. We're talking about the kind of month where your intensity doesn't just overwhelm people, it creates profound transformation. Where your power doesn't just intimidate, it inspires genuine respect. Where your passion doesn't just consume, it creates lasting connection. Where your ability to see beneath surfaces doesn't just expose weaknesses, it facilitates healing. Imagine waking up every morning feeling powerful without needing to control everything and everyone around you. Imagine your emotional depth creating intimacy instead of keeping people at arm's length through tests and manipulation. Imagine trusting people without needing to know their every secret or having leverage over them. Imagine your sexuality being about genuine connection rather than power dynamics. Imagine letting people see your vulnerability without fearing they'll use it against you. Imagine releasing grudges and moving forward without the weight of accumulated resentment. Imagine your transformative power being used to heal rather than destroy. But here's the raw truth most astrologers won't say directly: your greatest gifts are also your potential weapons. That incredible emotional intensity and depth, it becomes overwhelming darkness when you can't access lighter emotions or allow joy. That psychological insight, it becomes manipulation when you use understanding of people's weaknesses to control rather than support them. That passion, it becomes obsession when you can't let go, move on, or accept that not everything requires your complete absorption. That power, it becomes destruction when you tear down rather than transform, when you use your sting to hurt rather than protect. Your self-protection instincts, they become isolation when you trust no one, reveal nothing real, and keep everyone at emotional distance through walls, tests, and power plays. Your desire for deep connection, it becomes possession when you need to own, control, and merge completely with partners rather than allowing separate wholeness. January 2026 isn't asking you to become someone you're not. You'll never be the person who's comfortable with surface interactions, who doesn't feel intensely, who doesn't see beneath facades, or who doesn't crave profound transformation. That's not your nature and doesn't need to be. But this month is asking you hard questions. Can you be deep without being dark? Can you be powerful without being controlling? Can you be intense without being overwhelming? Can you trust without needing absolute certainty? Can you be vulnerable without seeing it as dangerous weakness? Can you let go of control without feeling powerless? Can you connect intimately without possessing completely? This month is testing whether you've matured enough to use your considerable power wisely rather than destructively. Whether you can be emotionally deep and emotionally available, psychologically insightful and compassionate rather than weaponizing insights, powerful and trusting, intimate and allowing separateness, transformative and constructive. Stay with me, because what I'm about to reveal will show you how to navigate January's potent energy in ways that honor your Scorpio nature while also liberating you from the control, suspicion, and emotional armor that have been protecting you but also imprisoning you. By February 1st, you won't just protect yourself from being hurt, you'll be brave enough to risk being hurt because you know you can survive and transform it. You won't just see people's shadows, you'll also see their light and help them access it. You won't just hold power over others, you'll empower yourself and them. You won't just survive, you'll thrive by letting yourself actually live instead of just strategically maneuvering through life. The cosmic setup, why January 2026 is engineered for Scorpio's evolution. Let me be crystal clear, January 2026 isn't just another intense month for Scorpio. This is a rare cosmic configuration where Pluto, your traditional ruling planet, recently moved into Aquarius, beginning a long-term transformation that's asking you to evolve beyond old patterns of control, secrecy, and emotional intensity used defensively rather than constructively. Pluto in Aquarius, which will unfold over years but begins making itself felt in January 2026, is asking you to transform your relationship to power, connection, vulnerability, control, and intensity. This is uncomfortable evolution for Scorpio. Your survival strategies, emotional armor, strategic distance, control of information and situations, psychological leverage over others, have protected you from being hurt. They've also prevented you from being fully known, truly intimate, and genuinely happy. January 2026 asks, are you ready to choose aliveness over safety? Mars, your modern ruling planet, moves through positions in January that activate your courage, passion, and power while also confronting you with situations where controlling isn't possible and trusting is necessary. Situations that require vulnerability rather than strategic maneuvering. Situations where you must choose between holding on to control and experiencing genuine connection. Venus dances through January in positions that soften your edges and open your heart while also showing you where fear has been masquerading as self-protection. Where walls you've built to keep hurt out have also kept love out. Where intensity you've used to bind people to you has actually pushed them away. Saturn continues teaching you about sustainable power and authentic authority rather than coercion and manipulation. You're learning that real power doesn't need to dominate or control. It's so secure in itself that it can be generous, trusting, and vulnerable. Jupiter is expanding your understanding of home, emotional foundation, and family patterns. This means opportunities to heal ancestral patterns of control, secrecy, and emotional unavailability. To create home that's emotionally safe rather than emotionally intense. To build foundation based on trust rather than strategic advantage. That the cosmic conditions are perfectly aligned to push you toward evolution from defended, controlling Scorpio to empowered, trusting Scorpio. The question is, are you brave enough to release control and trust that you'll be okay? January 1st to 10th. Shadow work and honest reckoning. The first 10 days of January are designed for Scorpio's natural intensity, deep introspection, shadow work, and unflinching honesty about patterns you'd rather not acknowledge. This is your element, going into darkness to find truth. Use these first 10 days for brutal self-examination focused on recognizing where your gifts have become weapons, where your self-protection has become self-imprisonment. The control audit. Track for 3 days every time you try to control situations, people, information, emotions, outcomes. Scorpio control is often subtle, asking seemingly casual questions to gather information you can use strategically, creating situations where you have leverage, testing people to see if they are trustworthy, withholding information to maintain power, manipulating through emotional intensity, or simply obsessing about situations trying to mentally control outcomes. You'll probably be shocked by how much energy you spend trying to control. This isn't because you're a bad person. It's because feeling out of control feels terrifying to Scorpio. But constant control attempts are exhausting and prevent genuine connection. Identify your top 3 to 5 control patterns. These become focus for change this month. The trust assessment. Who do you actually trust? Be honest, probably almost no one, or very few people, or you trust them but still verify everything, maintain leverage, and keep strategic distance. Journal. Why is trust so difficult? What are you afraid will happen if you trust? Typically Scorpio fears being betrayed, being hurt, being exposed as vulnerable, losing power, being taken advantage of, or people using your vulnerabilities against you. Then honestly assess, have your trust issues actually protected you? Or have they just isolated you and prevented intimacy? Because trust issues don't prevent betrayal, they prevent connection. Betrayal still happens whether you trust or not, but without trust, genuine intimacy is impossible. The vulnerability inventory. When did you last allow yourself to be genuinely vulnerable, not strategically vulnerable to manipulate or test, but actually vulnerable where you showed real feelings, needs, fears without knowing how it would be received? Scorpio rarely does this. You might perform vulnerability strategically, but real vulnerability where you're actually exposed. Almost never. Why? Because vulnerability feels like weakness and dangerous exposure to Scorpio. You believe showing vulnerability gives others power over you. Actually, vulnerability is courage, and strategic emotional distance gives others nothing to connect with. The manipulation check. Scorpio's psychological insight into people makes manipulation easy. You know what buttons to push, what people want to hear, how to create desired outcomes. Sometimes you do this consciously, sometimes it's so automatic you don't even notice. Be honest, where do you manipulate? Where do you use emotional intensity to get your way? Where do you create guilt or obligation? Where do you test people or create situations to see how they'll respond? Where do you withhold or reveal information strategically to maintain power? This isn't about judging yourself harshly. It's about recognizing that manipulation prevents authentic connection. When you're manipulating, you're treating people as chess pieces rather than humans, and they sense this even if they can't articulate it. The grudge inventory. Who are you holding grudges against? What resentments are you carrying? What betrayals, real or perceived, are you still bitter about months or years later? Scorpio never forgets wounds. You might outwardly move on while internally maintaining detailed memory of every hurt and plotting revenge. This poison accumulates. List everyone you're holding resentment toward. Then honestly assess, is holding this grudge serving you? Is this person even aware of your resentment? Are you letting them live rent-free in your head while they've moved on? What would releasing this resentment give you? The intensity check. Scorpio operates at intensity level that's overwhelming for most people. Everything is deep, meaningful, intense, all or nothing. You don't do casual, surface, or light. This intensity is gift when applied appropriately. It becomes problem when you can't access lighter emotions. You can't enjoy simple pleasures without adding layers of meaning. You exhaust people with constant emotional heaviness. You can't relax or be playful, or you view anything less than total intensity as shallow or meaningless. Assess honestly. Can you access joy, lightness, humor, simplicity? Or are you trapped in intensity? The privacy versus secrecy distinction. Scorpio values privacy, which is healthy. But you often cross into secrecy, hiding things not because they are private but because keeping secrets gives you power or protects you from vulnerability. Examine, what are you keeping secret? From whom? Why? Is this healthy privacy or strategic secrecy? Secrecy prevents intimacy. People can't fully know or trust someone who's constantly hiding, testing, or maintaining strategic information. Advantages to the power dynamics assessment. Examine your relationships, romantic, friendships, professional. Where are power dynamics at play? Where do you hold power over others? Where are you trying to maintain control through leverage, intensity, or psychological advantage? Healthy relationships have relatively balanced power. When you need power over people to feel safe around them, you're not actually in relationship, you're in strategic standoff. The transformation capacity check. Scorpio is sign of transformation, but are you using this gift constructively or destructively? Do you transform yourself and help others transform? Or do you destroy relationships, opportunities, people who get too close? When you feel your scorpionic intensity rising, ask, am I using this energy to transform or to destroy? By January 10th, you should have awareness of control patterns, honest assessment of trust capacity, recognition of vulnerability avoidance, acknowledgement of manipulation tendencies, inventory of held grudges, understanding of intensity's impact, clarity about privacy versus secrecy, assessment of power dynamics, and recognition of whether you're using transformative power constructively or destructively. This shadow work is foundation for everything else. January 11th to 20th, vulnerable action and trust experiments around January 13th to 15th. The energy shifts from shadow examination to actual practice, taking action that feels risky, being vulnerable in ways that feel dangerous, trusting when you don't have certainty, and releasing control in situations where you'd normally maintain it. For Scorpio, this period is terrifying. Every instinct tells you to protect, control, test, and maintain strategic advantage. Mid-January asks you to do the opposite, to be open, trusting, vulnerable, and see what happens. The trust experiments. Choose 2 to 3 situations where you'd normally control or maintain strategic advantage, and intentionally trust instead. This might mean trusting someone with information you'd normally withhold, delegating something you'd normally control, accepting help without needing to reciprocate immediately, sharing a vulnerability without knowing how it'll be received, or simply not verifying checking up on someone. This will feel incredibly uncomfortable, possibly dangerous. You'll want to maintain backup plans or secret leverage just in case. Resist this. Actually trust and see what happens. You'll discover most people are trustworthy in most situations. Being hurt occasionally doesn't destroy you. Vulnerability often creates connection rather than exploitation, and releasing control doesn't equal powerlessness. It actually creates different, more sustainable kind of power. The vulnerability practice. Share something genuinely vulnerable with someone you care about. Not strategically vulnerable, actually vulnerable. This might be admitting fear or insecurity, expressing need or want, sharing something you're ashamed of, showing feelings you usually hide, or asking for help with something meaningful. Your instinct will be to immediately deflect, minimize, or regain control of situation after being vulnerable. Resist this. Let the vulnerability stand. Allow yourself to be seen. Most people will respond with compassion, connection, and reciprocal vulnerability. This creates intimacy that strategic distance never can. The letting go practice. Choose something you've been trying to control, a relationship outcome, a work situation, another person's choices, or even your own emotions, and practice letting go. Not abandoning or not caring, but releasing the need to control it. This might look like allowing someone to make their own choices even when you think they are wrong, accepting you can't control how situations unfold, letting relationships be what they are rather than what you think they should be, or allowing your emotions to exist without needing to control or suppress them. Letting go of control feels like free fall to Scorpio, but you'll discover you're okay even when you're not controlling. Others are often more capable than you give them credit for, and situations often resolve better when you're not manipulating them. The grudge release. Choose 1 or 2 grudges from your month inventory and consciously release them. Not because the other person deserves forgiveness, but because carrying resentment is poisoning you. Releasing grudge doesn't mean condoning what happened or allowing continued harm. It means acknowledging what happened, recognizing the impact it had, choosing to release the resentment you're carrying, and consciously deciding not to continue giving this person power over your emotional state. You might need to do this multiple times. Scorpio doesn't release resentments easily. Each time they resurface, consciously release again. Eventually, the charge fades. The intensity modulation. Practice accessing lighter emotional states, joy, playfulness, humor, contentment. Scorpio often dismisses these as shallow, but they're actually essential for balanced emotional life. Do things purely for fun, not for deeper meaning. Engage in light conversations without adding intense undertones. Allow yourself to be silly or playful. Enjoy simple pleasures without making them profound. This feels foreign and possibly uncomfortable. You might judge yourself for wasting time on light activities. Do them anyway. Balanced emotional life includes full range, from profound depth to simple joy. The psychological insight for healing. Use your considerable psychological insight for healing rather than manipulation. When you notice someone's wounds, vulnerabilities, or patterns, ask yourself, can I support their healing rather than use this information for leverage? Offer compassionate understanding. Share insights gently if invited. Hold space for others' transformation. Use your depth to facilitate others' growth, rather than to maintain power over them. You'll discover that using your gifts constructively rather than manipulatively actually creates more genuine power and respect than strategic manipulation ever could. The openness practice. Practice being more open, sharing more of your thoughts, feelings, and experiences. Not everything remains strategic secret. Not every piece of information needs to be leveraged. Sometimes sharing creates connection that's more valuable than the power that secrecy provides. In conversations, share more freely. Answer questions directly rather than deflecting. Let people know you rather than maintaining mysterious distance. You'll fear that openness makes you vulnerable to exploitation. Sometimes it might, but mostly it creates connection, trust, and genuine intimacy. The jealousy and possessiveness work. Scorpio jealousy and possessiveness are legendary. Mid-January, when these feelings arise, work with them differently. Instead of acting on jealousy through control, interrogation, or manipulation, examine it. What am I actually afraid of? What need is unmet? What insecurity is activated? Then address the root fear rather than trying to control circumstances or people. Practice trusting your partner friend to make their own choices. Release need to possess completely. Allow people their own lives, friends, and privacy. Genuine connection doesn't require possession or constant monitoring. The power sharing. In situations where you'd normally hold all power, practice sharing it. Delegate real authority. Trust others' judgment. Allow collaborative decision-making rather than maintaining unilateral control. This feels dangerous. What if they make wrong choices? What if outcomes aren't optimal? But you'll discover that shared power often creates better outcomes than solo control, and that empowering others actually increases rather than decreases your own power. By January 20th, you should have experimented with trust, practiced genuine vulnerability, released some control, let go of at least one grudge, accessed lighter emotions, used insight for healing, been more open, worked with jealousy constructively, and shared power. You should feel both terrified and alive. That's growth. January 21st to 31st, integration, trust building, and sustainable transformation. The final third of January tests whether mid-month's vulnerable experiments become sustainable changes or just temporary discomfort you revert from once the initial energy fades. Will you continue trusting when past betrayals tempt you towards suspicion? Will you maintain vulnerability when self-protection feels safer? Will you keep releasing control when uncertainty feels threatening? Late January is where you prove your commitment to evolution from defended, controlling Scorpio to empowered, trusting Scorpio. Trust consolidation. Those trust experiments from mid-month, how did they go? Most likely, better than you feared. People were probably more trustworthy than your suspicions suggested. Being hurt didn't destroy you. Vulnerability created connection more often than exploitation. Now, continue trusting. Make it practice rather than experiment. When suspicion arises, question it rather than automatically acting on it. Is this real danger or old pattern? Usually it's old pattern. Build relationship with trust by taking small risks consistently. Each time you trust and survive, it becomes slightly easier to trust again. Vulnerability sustainability. Continue sharing vulnerably even as mid-month's intense energy fades. Don't retreat back into emotional armor just because you're not feeling particularly brave today. Vulnerability isn't one-time event, it's ongoing practice. Share your inner world regularly. Express needs and feelings. Ask for help when you need it. Show all of yourself, not just the powerful, controlled version. Some people might take advantage occasionally. Most won't. The connection vulnerability creates is worth the occasional risk. Control release maintenance. Situations where you release control mid-month, continue not controlling them. Resist temptation to just check or help a little, which is really controlling in disguise. Trust that people can handle their own situations, outcomes will unfold as they will, you can adapt to whatever happens. Not controlling doesn't mean being passive or not caring. Letting go of control is active choice and different form of power. Grudge release follow through. Resentments you released mid-month might try to resurface. Scorpio holds on to pain tenaciously. When old resentments arise, acknowledge them then consciously release again. You might need to do this many times before the resentment fully releases. That's normal. Keep choosing release over rumination. Intensity balance. Continue accessing full emotional range, not just depth and intensity but also lightness and joy. Schedule activities that are purely fun. Engage in light social interaction. Allow moments of simple contentment. Balanced emotional life includes the full spectrum. You can be a person of profound depth who also laughs easily, enjoys simple pleasures, and doesn't make everything into intense transformative experience. Psychological insight for good. Continue using your insight to support rather than manipulate. When you see people's patterns and vulnerabilities, hold them compassionately rather than strategically. You'll notice that people actually trust and open to you more when they sense you're using your perception for their benefit rather than for leverage over them. Compassionate depth creates more meaningful connection than strategic insight. Openness as practice. Continue being more open, sharing thoughts, feelings, experiences without strategic calculation. Let people know you. You're discovering. Openness doesn't destroy you. Mystery isn't as valuable as genuine connection. Being known creates belonging that secrecy never can, and you can be both private about appropriate things and open about your inner world. Jealousy transformation. When jealousy and possessiveness arise, continue working with them constructively rather than acting them out through control or interrogation. Feel the feelings. Examine what they are telling you about your fears and needs. Communicate vulnerably about insecurities rather than accusingly about others' behavior. Trust your own worthiness rather than trying to control others' choices. Healthy relationships include both togetherness and separateness. You can feel secure without possessing completely. Power evolution. Continue sharing power, empowering others, and trusting collaborative approaches. You're discovering. Shared power is sustainable power. Empowering others actually increases your own power. Trust creates loyalty that control never can, and genuine power doesn't need to dominate to feel powerful. Self-transformation. The transformation you're capable of facilitating in others. Turn it on yourself. Use your insight to understand your own patterns, wounds, and potential. Use your intensity to fuel your own growth rather than just examining others. Scorpio transformation power is legendary. Apply it to becoming person you're capable of being, deeply feeling yet emotionally available, psychologically insightful yet compassionate, powerful yet trusting, intense yet joyful. Planning February realistically. As January closes, plan February based on January's lessons. What practices need to continue? What growth deserves sustained attention? What will challenge your commitment to trust and vulnerability? Anticipate Scorpio traps, situations that activate suspicion, moments when control feels safer than trust, relationships that test your vulnerability, or circumstances that tempt you back to strategic manipulation. How will you handle these based on January's growth? By January 31st, you should feel more trusting without being naive, more vulnerable without being exposed, more open without losing appropriate boundaries, lighter without losing depth, and more genuinely powerful rather than defensively controlling. You shouldn't feel paranoid, isolated by secrecy, exhausted by constant control, imprisoned by resentments, or using your intensity to push people away. Relationships deep dive. From possession to authentic intimacy, let's talk honestly about Scorpio in relationships, because this is where your depth becomes either profound intimacy or suffocating possession, where your intensity creates either transformative connection or overwhelming darkness. Your relationship pattern probably looks like this. You meet someone and are immediately intensely focused on them. You want to know everything, their past, their secrets, their vulnerabilities. You test them to see if they are trustworthy. You create intense emotional and often sexual connection quickly. You want to merge completely, know their every thought and feeling, spend all your time together, become essential to each other. You're incredibly loyal, devoted, and protective. You expect absolute loyalty and honesty in return. You're vigilant for betrayal, constantly watching for signs they might hurt you. But often what happens? Your intensity overwhelms them. Your jealousy and possessiveness feel controlling. Your tests feel manipulative. Your need to know everything feels invasive. Your vigilance creates atmosphere of suspicion. They feel they can't breathe, can't have privacy, can't have separate life. They either submit or they leave. Then you feel devastated and furious. You gave everything. Why did they leave? You opened up. Why did they betray your trust? You were loyal. Why weren't they? You might plot revenge or cut them off completely with no explanation, leaving them confused about what happened. January 2026 is transforming this pattern. For single Scorpio, when you meet someone interesting, resist the urge to immediately intensify, merge, test, and possess. Instead, allow relationship to develop gradually. Don't immediately want to know everything about them. Let them reveal themselves naturally over time. Don't test them. Tests are manipulative and create exactly the distrust you claim to be checking for. Don't create intense connection so quickly that they are overwhelmed. Allow space and separateness even as connection develops. Trust that, if they are trustworthy, time will reveal this without tests. If they are not trustworthy, you'll discover this too and survive. Creating intense connection quickly isn't same as deep connection. Depth requires time. You can be deeply interested without being possessive. Also, show your vulnerability gradually and genuinely, not strategically. Let them see real you, not just powerful, intense, mysterious version but also scared, insecure, hurt parts. Vulnerability creates intimacy that strategic intensity never can. For coupled Scorpio, you've been with your partner for months or years. January asks, is this authentic intimacy or possession disguised as love? Do you trust them? Or do you monitor, check, test, and maintain leverage? Do you allow them separate life, friends, and privacy? Or do you need to know and control everything? Real intimacy requires trust without constant verification, vulnerability from both people, separateness as well as togetherness, and each person maintaining their own wholeness rather than merging into one entity. Practice trusting without checking up, allowing privacy without surveillance, supporting their separate interests and friendships, expressing insecurity vulnerably rather than accusingly, releasing jealousy rather than acting on it, and sharing power in relationship rather than maintaining unilateral control. Also, work on your own wholeness. You should have your own life, interests, friends independent of relationship. Complete person choosing connection with another complete person, not two halves desperately clinging to feel whole. The jealousy work. Scorpio jealousy is intense, often irrational, and can be destructive. When jealousy arises, work with it differently. Instead of interrogating partner, checking their phone messages, creating rules about who they can see, punishing them for triggering your jealousy, or cutting them off emotionally. Try feeling the jealousy without acting on it, examining what fear is underneath, communicating vulnerability rather than accusation you're obviously attracted to, and working on your own self-worth rather than trying to control their attention. Healthy relationships include both partners having friends, interests, and lives outside the relationship. Jealousy that tries to prevent this creates suffocation, not security. The testing cessation. Scorpio tests partners constantly, creating situations to see if they'll betray, watching for signs of disloyalty, checking if they'll still be there if you push them away. These tests are manipulative and self-fulfilling prophecies. Stop testing. Either trust them or don't be in relationship with them. Constant testing creates exactly the distrust and distance you fear. People can't feel safe or close when they are constantly being tested and monitored. The secret keeping. Are you open with your partner? Or do you maintain strategic secrets, withhold information, or keep them at emotional distance even while demanding their complete openness? Intimacy requires mutual vulnerability and openness. You can't demand they share everything while you maintain privacy and secrets. Either both people are open or neither can be. One-sided vulnerability doesn't create intimacy. The intensity modulation. Your intensity in relationships is gift when it creates depth and passion. It becomes problem when it's constant and overwhelming, when every conversation is heavy and meaningful, when everything is life or death important, when there's no lightness or playfulness. Practice being light sometimes, allowing surface conversation without adding intense undertones, doing fun activities together without making them profound, and simply enjoying each other's company without constant emotional processing. Balanced relationships include both depth and lightness, both intensity and ease. The control release. Where are you trying to control your partner? Their choices, their friends, their time, their thoughts, their feelings. Control isn't love. Control is fear pretending to be care. Release control. Trust them to make their own choices even when you think they're wrong. Allow them their own feelings even when they are different from yours. Support their growth even when it takes them in directions you didn't plan. You can't control someone into loving you or being trustworthy. You can only trust or not trust, stay or leave. Trying to control just creates resentment and eventual abandonment, the very thing you're trying to prevent. The resentment clearing. What resentments are you holding against your partner? What hasn't been forgiven? Scorpio never forgets wounds, but unforgiven resentments poison relationships. Address issues when they happen. Express hurt directly. Work toward resolution. Then actually forgive and release rather than filing away every hurt to potentially use as weapon later. Keeping score and holding grudges creates distance and eventual relationship death. If you can't forgive, honestly assess whether you should stay. Staying while holding resentment is unfair to both of you. By January 31st, your relationship should feel more trusting, more balanced, allowing mutual vulnerability and separateness, characterized by authentic intimacy rather than possession, and freeing rather than suffocating. They shouldn't feel constantly monitored, controlled, tested, intense without lightness, or based on fear and strategic positioning rather than genuine connection. Career mastery. Power through transformation, not domination professionally. January 2026 is about using your considerable power, insight, and transformation abilities constructively rather than destructively, empowering rather than dominating, transforming rather than destroying. Scorpio career strengths are real. You're intensely focused, psychologically insightful, strategic, powerful, capable of profound transformation and change management, excellent in crisis, skilled at uncovering hidden issues, and able to go deep where others stay surface. Scorpio career challenges are also real. You might be controlling, manipulative, hold grudges, use psychological insight to exploit rather than support, create power plays, trust no one, keep everything secretive, or destroy what you can't control. January is when you leverage strengths while addressing challenges. Transformational leadership. Scorpio has capacity to lead profound transformation, organizational change, cultural shifts, difficult turnarounds. But you need to do this by empowering people through the transformation rather than dominating them. Transformational leadership means clearly communicating vision and why change is necessary, involving people and process rather than dictating from above, addressing resistance with compassion rather than force, supporting people through uncertainty, and maintaining trust throughout challenging process. Your intensity and ability to face difficult truths are assets here. Use them to facilitate necessary change while supporting those affected by it. Psychological insight for good. Your ability to read people, understand motivations, and see beneath surfaces is valuable professionally. Use this gift to mentor and develop people, mediate conflicts by understanding all perspectives, anticipate problems before they escalate, or create environments where people can be authentic and contribute their best. Don't use psychological insight to manipulate people into desired outcomes, exploit vulnerabilities for personal advantage, maintain leverage through knowing secrets, or create fear-based compliance. People sense when you're using insight compassionately versus strategically. Compassionate use creates loyalty and respect. Manipulative use creates fear and eventual betrayal. Power sharing. Scorpio often hoards power, information, and decision-making authority. This creates bottlenecks and prevents organizational effectiveness. Practice delegating real authority, sharing information transparently, trusting others with important work, allowing collaborative decision-making, and empowering rather than controlling. You'll discover shared power is more sustainable than controlled power, empowered teams are more effective than controlled ones, and trusting creates loyalty that control never can. Grudge management. Professional grudges are costly. When someone crosses you, Scorpio never forgets and often plots revenge. This consumes energy and creates toxic environments. Develop better conflict resolution. Address issues directly when they occur. Have difficult conversations constructively. Move toward resolution rather than accumulating resentment. And actually forgive and move forward professionally even if relationship isn't personally close. Holding professional grudges hurts you more than the other person. Release them. Trust building. Scorpio professional trust issues create problems. You don't trust colleagues. Don't share information. Keep everything secretive. Always suspect hidden agendas. This prevents collaboration and makes you difficult to work with. Practice trusting more. Share information appropriately. Assume good intentions until proven otherwise. Be transparent about your own motivations. Delegate without constantly checking. And allow others to be competent without undermining them. Most colleagues are trustworthy in most situations. Your suspicion creates the very distrust you fear. Crisis management excellence. Scorpio actually thrives in crisis. You can face darkness others avoid, stay calm in chaos, and make difficult decisions. Lean into this strength. During crises, your intensity and focus are assets. Your ability to see through surface to underlying issues is valuable. Your willingness to do what's necessary even when it's hard serves everyone. Just make sure you're managing crisis through empowerment rather than control, creating sustainable solutions rather than just dominating the situation. What to avoid professionally. Don't create power plays or manipulate situations for personal advantage. Don't hold grudges that poison working relationships. Don't hoard information or maintain unnecessary secrecy. Don't use psychological insight to exploit people's vulnerabilities. Don't destroy people or projects you can't control. By January 31st professionally, you should have used your intensity for transformation, leveraged psychological insight compassionately, shared power and authority, managed conflicts without resentment, built more trust, and handled any crises with empowered calm. You should feel respected for your depth and power use constructively rather than feared for manipulation and control. Final integration. Becoming the empowered Scorpio you're meant to be. January 2026 wasn't just a month, it was rebirth. You've done the bravest work Scorpio can do, releasing control, practicing trust, allowing vulnerability, letting go of resentments, and choosing connection over self-protection. This contradicts every survival instinct you have. This is profound transformation, the kind Scorpio facilitates for others but rarely undergoes yourself. You're not just talking about transformation, you're living it. Honor this courage. By January 31st, deep reflection, control evolution. Has your need to control lessened? Can you trust process without managing every detail? Can you let things unfold without constant intervention? Or does releasing control still feel terrifying? Trust development. Are you trusting more readily? Can you trust without absolute certainty or strategic advantage? Or does suspicion still dominate? Vulnerability courage. Have you shared genuine vulnerability? Shown real feelings and needs? Let people see you beneath the armor. How did it feel? What happened? Grudge release. Did you release resentments you've been carrying? How did that feel? What space did it create? Do old resentments keep returning? Intensity balance. Can you access lighter emotions now? Can you experience joy, playfulness, contentment? Or are you still trapped in constant intensity? Look ahead to February with transformed awareness. Based on January's foundation, what practices need to continue? What growth deserves sustained attention? What will test your commitment to trust and vulnerability? Anticipate Scorpio challenges, betrayals that tempt you back to distrust, uncertainty that makes control appealing, vulnerability hangovers that make armor seem safer, or situations that activate your sting. Most importantly, recognize that real power doesn't need to control, dominate, or manipulate. Real power is so secure in itself that it can trust, be vulnerable, release control, and empower others. The defensiveness, secrecy, and control were never power, they were fear wearing power's costume. You're Scorpio. You're built for depth, transformation, psychological insight, passionate intensity, and profound connection. January 2026 showed you how to embody these gifts from trust and vulnerability rather than from control and self-protection. Now sustain what you've built. The depth remains, the intensity stays, the insight continues, but the controlling loosens, the suspicion eases, the armor drops, and you discover that vulnerable Scorpio, trusting, open, emotionally available, is far more powerful than defended Scorpio ever was. Scorpio, I need to hear from you. What's the ONE control pattern you're releasing this month? Or what's the ONE vulnerability you're choosing? Or what's the ONE grudge you're letting go? Drop it in the comments. Declaring it publicly creates accountability and transformation becomes real. And listen, if this reading penetrated your armor and touched your defended heart, if you felt called out in ways that stung but catalyzed growth, if you're ready to choose trust over control and vulnerability over self-protection, then do 3 things right now. Hit that like button so other Scorpios can find this transformation roadmap, subscribe so you never miss cosmic guidance designed for your intense, powerful soul, and turn on notifications so February's forecast reaches you immediately. Also, share this with your Scorpio friends, family, or loved ones. They need this permission to release control too. Send it to that Scorpio who trusts no one, who manipulates constantly, who's isolated by their own defenses. January 2026 is Scorpio's month to prove that the most intense, powerful, psychologically insightful sign can transform from defended controller to empowered truster, and that true power comes from vulnerability, not armor. Are you ready to die and be reborn?